There's a little white bag sitting in almost every gardener's shed in America, and people swear it's magic. Sprinkle it around your tomatoes, they say, and you'll be drowning in fruit by August. Your grandmother probably did it, your neighbor definitely does it. And every spring, the internet lights up with the same promise that a scoop of Epsom salt will double your harvest for the price of a candy bar. So here's the part nobody wants to hear. Most of that is a myth. And one of the most popular tricks out there can actually wreck your tomatoes instead of saving them. But before you click away, stick with me because there is a real story here. There's exactly one situation where Epsom salt genuinely helps your tomatoes, and I'll show you how to spot it. Then I'm going to walk you through the cheap, almost free tricks that real university research backs up. These are the ones that actually move the needle on your harvest. Most of these cost under $1. Some cost nothing at all. And by the end, you'll know more about growing tomatoes than half the expert videos on this platform. So grab a cup of coffee and let's separate the facts from the folklore. Number 1. The real truth about Epsom salt. Let's start with the star of the show because there's a kernel of truth buried under all the hype. Epsom salt is not really salt in the way you are picturing. It is a compound called magnesium sulfate, about 10% magnesium and 13% sulfur. Magnesium genuinely matters to a tomato plant. It sits right at the center of every chlorophyll molecule, which is the green pigment a plant uses to turn sunlight into food. No magnesium, no photosynthesis, no tomatoes. So the logic seems airtight. Add magnesium, get healthier plants, get more fruit. Here's the catch. Your plant can only use the magnesium it is actually missing. If your soil already has enough, and most garden soil does, then adding more does absolutely nothing for your harvest. It is like taking a vitamin for a deficiency you do not have. You do not get extra benefit. You just pay for P. Controlled studies at Auburn University and Delaware Valley College tested this directly, and they found no boost in yield or growth from Epsom salt on tomatoes that were not deficient in the first place. So when does it help? Only when your soil is truly low on magnesium, and that mostly happens in sandy, fast-draining acidic soils that get heavily rained on. The telltale sign is interveinal chlorosis. That's a mouthful, but it's easy to spot. The older, lower leaves turn yellow between the veins, while the veins themselves stay green. It looks like a green skeleton on a yellow leaf. If you see that pattern creeping up from the bottom of the plant, magnesium might genuinely be your problem. If that's you, here's the honest, useful version of the trick. Dissolve 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt in 1 gallon of water and spray it directly on the leaves. A foliar spray like this gets magnesium into the plant fast, much faster than adding it to the soil. But this is the important part. Confirm the deficiency first with a cheap soil test before you go scattering it everywhere. Because using Epsom salt when you don't need it isn't just useless. As you're about to see, it can actually backfire. Number 2, the blossom end rot trap that ruins harvests. This is the big one. This is the myth that's costing people their tomatoes every single summer, and I need you to really hear this part. Picture it. You've babied your plants for weeks. The first big, beautiful green tomatoes finally show up. Then one day you flip one over and the bottom has turned into an ugly black sunken leathery scab. That's blossom end rot, and it's heartbreaking. So you do what the internet tells you, you run for the Epsom salt. Stop. Put the bag down. Blossom end rot has nothing to do with magnesium. It's a calcium problem. Specifically, the rapidly growing fruit isn't getting enough calcium to build its cell walls, so the cells at the bottom collapse and die. And here's where the Epsom salt does real damage. Calcium and magnesium are both positively charged ions, and a plant's roots only have so many doorways to absorb them. When you flood the soil with magnesium from Epsom salt, that magnesium muscles its way through the doors and crowds out the calcium. Scientists call this ion antagonism. In plain English, you make a calcium problem worse by adding magnesium. So the most popular Epsom salt hack on the internet is the exact opposite of what you should do. Now here's the twist that'll actually save your harvest. In most cases, your soil isn't even short on calcium. The calcium is there, the plant just cannot move it up to the fruit. And the number one reason for that? Inconsistent watering. When the soil swings from bone dry to soaking wet and back again, the plant cannot transport calcium where it is needed, and the fruit pays the price. University extension services across the country, from California to Maryland to Alabama, all reach the same conclusion: blossom end rot is mostly a watering problem wearing a calcium costume. The good news is that it is fixable, and it costs nothing. Pull off any fruit that is already rotted. It cannot be saved, and it is just stealing resources from the healthy ones. Then get serious about even, consistent moisture, which we will dig into in a minute. The very next round of tomatoes on that same plant will usually come out perfect. Number 3, consistent watering, the free trick that beats them all. If I could only give you one piece of advice in this entire video, it would be this. Consistent watering is the single most powerful thing you can do for your tomato harvest, and it doesn't cost a dime. Here's why it matters so much. A tomato plant is basically a water pump. Water carries every nutrient the plant uses, including the calcium that prevents blossom end rot, up from the roots and into the leaves and fruit. When the water supply is steady, that delivery system runs smoothly. When it is erratic, everything downstream suffers. You get cracked fruit, you get blossom end rot, you get stressed plants that drop their flowers instead of setting fruit. The fix is a rhythm, not a flood. Tomatoes generally want about 1 inch of water per week, and they'd much rather get it in a few deep soakings than in daily little sprinkles. Deep watering pulls the roots down where the soil stays moist and cool. Shallow, frequent watering keeps the roots near the surface where they dry out the fastest, the opposite of what you want. A couple of cheap habits make this almost foolproof. Water at the base of the plant, not over the top of the leaves. Wet foliage is an open invitation to fungal diseases like early blight, and watering the soil directly sends every drop to the roots where it belongs. Water in the morning if you can, so the plant goes into the heat of the day fully charged. And if you want to get fancy for about $1, stick a cheap rain gauge in the garden so you actually know how much water your plants are getting instead of guessing. The takeaway is simple. People spend money on miracle powders trying to fix problems that a watering can would have prevented. Steady moisture isn't glamorous. It won't go viral, but it's the closest thing to a real secret that tomato growing has. Number 4, mulch. Lock in moisture for pennies. If consistent watering is the goal, mulch is the cheat code that makes it almost automatic. And depending on what you use, it can cost you nothing at all. Mulch is just a protective layer you spread over the soil around your plants. A 2 to 3 inch blanket of it does something quietly powerful. It slows down evaporation. Bare soil bakes in the sun and loses moisture fast, which forces those dramatic wet-dry swings we just talked about. Cover that soil, and the water you give your plants actually stays in the root zone where it can do some good. It's the difference between filling a bucket with a hole in the bottom and filling one without. But moisture is only half the story. Mulch also keeps the soil temperature steadier, so the roots aren't getting cooked at noon and chilled at night. It smothers weeds, which means less competition stealing water and nutrients from your tomatoes. And critically, it creates a barrier between the soil and the lower leaves. A lot of nasty tomato diseases live in the dirt and splash up onto the plant when rain or your hose hits bare ground. A layer of mulch intercepts those splashes before they ever reach a leaf. The best part is how cheap it is. You can use straw, shredded leaves you raked up last fall, dried grass clippings, or untreated wood chips. If you bag your lawn clippings, you already have mulch sitting in your shed for free. A bale of straw runs a few dollars and covers a serious stretch of garden. Whatever you choose, just keep it pulled back an inch or so from the actual stem so it does not trap moisture right against the plant. So while everyone is arguing about magic powders, the quiet gardener with a layer of free grass clippings around their tomatoes is the one with the steadiest soil and the fewest problems. Mulch is not exciting, but it works, and your water bill will thank you too. Number 5. Bury the stem deep. This one is free. Here's a trick that costs absolutely nothing and starts working the very first day your transplant goes into the ground. Most people get it wrong. When you buy or grow a tomato seedling, your instinct is to plant it at the same depth it was sitting in the pot. Do not. Tomatoes have a superpower that almost no other vegetable shares. They can grow roots straight out of their stem. Take a close look at a tomato stem, and you will see tiny little bumps and hairs running up and down it. Every single one of those is a root just waiting for an excuse to grow. Bury that stem in soil, and within a week or two, it erupts into a whole new underground network of roots. Why do you care? Because a bigger root system is the engine behind everything else. More roots mean the plant can pull up more water and more nutrients, which means a sturdier plant that is far better at handling heat, drought, and the stress that leads to problems like blossom and rot. You are essentially giving your tomato a head start that pays dividends all season long. Here's how to do it. When you transplant, pinch off the lower sets of leaves so you have a clean length of bare stem. Then plant the seedling deep enough that only the top few sets of leaves are above the soil. You can bury a third to half of the whole plant this way. If your soil is heavy or you would rather not dig a deep hole, lay the plant down in a shallow trench on its side and gently bend the top up out of the ground. The buried portion roots all the same. It feels wrong the first time you do it. You will swear you have buried half your plant alive. But come back in a few weeks and you will have a stockier, stronger, deeper-rooted tomato than anything your neighbor transplanted the shallow way, and you did not spend a cent. Number 6. Prune the suckers and strip the lower leaves. Now let's talk about the free trick that feels the most counterintuitive. It is cutting parts of your plant off to get more tomatoes. It sounds backwards, but with the right kind of tomato, it absolutely works. First, a quick but crucial distinction. Tomatoes come in two main types. Determinate varieties grow to a set size, set all their fruit around the same time, and then they are basically done, and you mostly leave those alone. Indeterminate varieties are the sprawling vines that keep growing and producing all season long, and those are the ones that love a good pruning. Most of the big slicing and heirloom tomatoes people grow are indeterminate, so this likely applies to you. The targets are called suckers. A sucker is the little shoot that pops up in the armpit where a side branch meets the main stem. Left alone, every sucker tries to become a whole new stem with its own leaves and fruit. That sounds great until you realize the plant only has so much energy to go around. A jungle of stems means lots of leaves and lots of small, slow-ripening fruit, all crammed together with no airflow. Pinch those suckers out while they're small, and you funnel the plant's energy into fewer, bigger, faster ripening tomatoes. The second target is the lowest leaves on the plant, the ones closest to the ground. Those bottom leaves are the most likely to catch soil-borne diseases that splash up when you water, and they get the least sunlight anyway. Stripping off the lower foot or so of foliage opens up airflow around the base of the plant, helps it dry out faster after rain, and cuts off the easiest path for disease to climb aboard. A word of caution because balance matters. The leaves are the plant's solar panels, and in really hot, sunny climates, they also shade the fruit and prevent sun scald. So do not go wild and strip the plant naked. Pinch the suckers, clear the lowest leaves, and leave the plant plenty of healthy canopy up top. Done right, it is a free way to get a cleaner, healthier, more productive vine. Number 7. Test your soil instead of guessing. We'll finish with the trick that ties this entire video together, and it's the one almost nobody bothers with. Before you add anything to your garden, find out what your soil actually needs. Think about everything we've covered. Epsom salt only helps if you're short on magnesium. Calcium only helps if you're genuinely short on calcium. Fertilizer only helps in the amounts your soil is actually lacking, and piling on too much nitrogen can even trigger blossom end rot by pushing the plant to grow leaves at the expense of fruit. Almost every miracle cure people throw at their tomatoes is a shot in the dark at a target they've never actually looked at. A soil test turns the lights on. The cheapest version is a simple test kit from the garden center for a few dollars, which gives you a rough read on your pH and the big 3 nutrients. For tomatoes, you're aiming for a soil pH somewhere around 6.2 to 6.8, get that right, and the plant can actually access the nutrients already sitting in your dirt. If pH is way off, even a soil full of calcium and magnesium can leave your plant starving because locked up nutrients might as well not be there. For the gold standard, your local university extension office will run a full soil test for a small fee and hand you back specific recommendations for your exact garden. It's one of the best kept secrets in American gardening and is nearly free. The reason this matters so much is that it makes everything else on this list precise instead of hopeful. You stop guessing. You stop throwing money and mystery powders at problems you don't have. You add what your soil is missing, fix your watering, mulch, prune, and plant deep, and you let real, boring, proven science do what marketing powder never could. That's how you actually grow more tomatoes. Not with a viral hack, but with a handful of cheap habits that the science actually stands behind. So, there it is, the truth behind the most overhyped trick in the garden and the real, dollar store cheap moves that genuinely earn you more tomatoes. If this saved you from a mistake or taught you something your neighbor does not know, hit that subscribe button so you never miss what works and what does not, and I want to hear from you. Try one of these this season and drop a comment telling us how your tomatoes turned out. Let's grow something real together.